In January of 1959, 10 young athletic students from the Soviet Union's Ural Polytechnic Institute assembled for a Category 3 winter ski tour. Led by 23-year-old engineering student Igor Dyatlov, the group was highly trained in backcountry navigation and extreme weather survival. Their route targeted the desolate northern Ural Mountains. The expedition was designed as a demanding physical test, culminating in a traverse across the eastern slopes of Kholat-Syakh, a peak known to the indigenous Mansi people as Dead Mountain. The group traveled by train into the remote Soviet taiga, eventually continuing on skis. One member turned back early due to nerve pain, leaving 9 hikers to proceed into the deepening snow. By the late afternoon of February 1st, deteriorating weather slowed their progress. To avoid losing altitude, they decided to pitch their tent on an exposed, treeless slope about 300 meters below the summit, settling in for a freezing night. The group's meticulous diaries and disciplined pace up until the final night leave no obvious explanation for what followed. The hikers were scheduled to send a telegram upon returning to civilization by February 12th. When the date passed in silence, mounting panic among their families forced the university and local authorities into action. A massive Soviet search operation launched into the mountains, combining military personnel, indigenous trackers, and student volunteers. They faced brutal winter conditions, navigating temperatures plunging to -30 degrees Celsius in near-zero visibility. On February 26th, an aerial search plane finally spotted a shape against the white expanse of Kholat-Syakh. It was the group's tent, partially collapsed and buried under a layer of fresh snow. This layout shows the tent deliberately slashed from the inside, with heavy coats, boots, and gear neatly left behind. Trailing downslope were 9 sets of single-file footprints, showing individuals walking in socks or barefoot directly toward the tree line. Experienced mountaineers know that abandoning winter gear in sub-zero winds ensures death. To intentionally destroy their only shelter and walk into the storm, the hikers reacted to a threat that overrode their basic survival instincts. Searchers followed the barefoot tracks down the mountain to the edge of the forest, where the footprints faded near a large Siberian cedar tree. Beside the remnants of a small improvised fire pit, they found the frozen bodies of 2 hikers. Both men were entirely shoeless and wearing only their underwear. Medical examiners recognized this specific behavior. As a person freezes, severe hypothermia impairs the brain's thermoregulation. Failing blood vessels suddenly dilate, flooding the skin with warm blood. The victim experiences a burning sensation, leading them to irrationally strip off their clothes in the snow, a phenomenon known as paradoxical undressing. Searching the open slope between the cedar tree and the abandoned tent, the team located 3 more bodies, including Igor Dyatlov. They were spaced hundreds of meters apart, physically oriented as if desperately trying to crawl back up the incline toward their camp. Autopsies confirmed these 5 individuals died of hypothermia, yet their final positions on the freezing slope indicate that whatever drove them out of the tent had passed, leaving them to realize their sudden evacuation was a fatal mistake. The remaining 4 hikers lay hidden until May, when the spring thaw allowed searchers to probe a steep creek ravine deeper in the woods, finding the bodies buried beneath several meters of dense snow. This medical schematic compares their autopsies. 3 hikers in the ravine suffered deeply fractured skulls and shattered ribs, injuries requiring a kinetic force equivalent to a high-speed car crash. Despite this crushing internal compression, the exterior skin layer remained intact, free of lacerations or defensive bruising. The scene yielded further anomalies. One female hiker was missing her eyes, lips, and tongue. Additionally, forensic labs detected low-level beta radiation on several articles of the victim's recovered clothing. Faced with this accumulation of evidence, the 1959 Soviet inquiry abruptly closed. The official resolution sealed the case files and vaguely attributed the deaths to a compelling unknown force. This collision of internal trauma, missing tissue, and government secrecy made a simple mountain accident difficult for the public to accept, fueling decades of international scrutiny. When the Soviet archives opened in the 1990s, modern researchers began cross-examining decades of speculation against the hard, physical data collected at the site. The The radiation anomaly, long cited as evidence of a nuclear accident, was resolved by forensic dosimetry. The beta radiation was merely mundane thorium residue transferred directly from the mantles of the group's standard-issue gas camping lanterns. Theories of an illicit military weapons test fail upon a review of the terrain. The search teams documented a total absence of blast craters, scattered shrapnel, chemical scorching, or external fragmentation wounds on the hikers. Another hypothesis tests the effects of the mountain itself. High winds shearing over the domed topography of Holat-Siak can generate infrasound, imperceptible, low-frequency acoustic waves that are scientifically proven to induce severe physiological terror and panic in humans. An infrasound-induced panic attack aligns with the slashed tent and the frantic, barefoot descent. However, a sound wave simply does not explain the severe mechanical, physical trauma found on the bodies in the ravine. In 2021, researchers from the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology developed a computational model that reconciled the injuries with the environment, proposing a specific delayed slab avalanche. This cross-section of the slope demonstrates the trigger mechanics. To pitch their tent on a flat surface, the hikers dug a shallow wedge into the snowpack. This cut destabilized a weak layer of snow, slowly approaching the breaking point under hours of intense wind loading. The simulation shows that a heavy, localized block of rigid snow fractured and slid a short distance. It crashed directly onto the tent, inflicting compressive, blunt force trauma on the sleeping hikers, without leaving external lacerations. The missing facial tissue on the ravine victims is also explained by natural variables. The tissue lost resulted from natural aquatic scavenging after the bodies spent several months submerged in a flowing meltwater creek. The sequence of events aligns with the evidence. Struck by a crushing weight, they slashed the ruined tent. Fearing a secondary avalanche, they fled toward the trees, succumbing to the freezing cold. The compelling unknown force, cited in 1959, aligns with this specific environmental failure. Modern scientific rigor suggests that even the most enduring anomalies of the pass can be explained through geomechanics and simple biology.